Okay, I'll start talking with the intro, and then everyone should get a chance to get in by the time that it is ready for me or ready for your speaker today. Let's see. There we go. So today's topic is AI data centers, structural steel, racking, and enclosures. If you go into the webinar chat, you're going to see the link for you to download the report if you haven't done so already. So go ahead and do that as I'm chatting here. So you'll have that report handy if you want to reference it. So again, my name is Tom Reed. I'm the program manager for the Energy and Manufacturing in Appalachia program. I wanted to share a little bit of information about our program. If you see there at the bottom, and I'll also put it in chat, if you go to wemakeithere.org/energy, you can go to our website where we have, this is the 11th of our energy supply chain reports. And we have, if you look here at our calendar, we have another 6 to 8 that we have planned that will be coming out through March of 2026. So when all is said and done, we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 to 20 of the supply chain reports. They all follow a similar structure on helping a manufacturer to make a go, no-go decision on what is the current state of this industry, of this supply chain, who are the key players, where are the growth opportunities, how can you get started? There's a lot of great data. And so we have worked with authors like the person I'm about to introduce this morning, who have key knowledge in these supply chains and energy. And they've done a lot of the hard work for you so that you can take a look. And there's a lot of great links in these reports to help you to determine, find the fundamental information. And certainly those who are in the EMA program, such as Catalyst Connection in Southwestern Pennsylvania, we have MEP centers all throughout the 5 states that we support, who have knowledgeable people to assist you and answer any questions you have beyond the reports. So, but for today, for our report, I would like to introduce you all. If you haven't been online with our previous reports or know about her and her other various areas, but we have Dr. Deborah Stine. She's the founder of the Science and Technology Policy Academy. She previously served as the executive director of President Obama's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. She's a science and technology specialist at the Congressional Research Service and a study director at the National Academies of Sciences, among many other areas, and as well as working at Carnegie Mellon University. So we are very happy to have her work with us on the AI data centers. Like I said, this is the 4th report of the series, and this one is going to be on structural steel. So welcome. And I guess my last thing I will say is if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section, and we will address those at the end of the report. But welcome, Debbie, and I will turn it over to you with all this great information.
Thanks, Tom. So this is the 4th in the series. For those of you who have not been with us before for the other AI data center reports, the goal here is to provide support for small and medium-sized manufacturers who are interested in providing components for the potential market opportunity presented by AI data centers. And previously we had an overview, we talked about advanced cooling and energy. Today we're talking about steel. So as we're talking about steel, we're talking about structural steel as well as steel components within the data centers. So I always like to kind of talk about like what's happening in the news on whatever topic it is in the AI data center world. As you know, it's very active. So here, this is an article from actually a UK publication, as you might have guessed, because his data centers was it differently. But steel, of course, is very active in the the role of tariffs and things like that that are happening. That's creating a lot of like uncertainty in the marketplace. But I thought this was interesting. This is from July, that in terms of like the actions by the US and UK governments will still encourage companies to begin pivoting investments in local steel production and manufacturing, so they aren't heavily reliant on international suppliers. And so therefore, for the data center industry, developers will be better able to focus on building facilities that are closer to where materials and critical equipment are made. This regional capacity makes supply chains shorter and more reliable. So that's very important because you'll see an overall theme in this world, particularly of steel related products, is sort of the green. Sort of all these companies have sustainability goals. In Europe, some of these are in law, and local companies that are able to supply parts that are near term versus near to the data center as opposed to long distance away definitely do have an advantage. This one is from an organization called Stansberry Research, which actually focuses more like on the investment side of things. But I thought this was interesting that one hyperscale AI data center, those are the big ones, require 20,000 tons of steel. And that even like a standard AI data center has 1,500 to 2,000 tons of steel. And notice again, this ESG, which is, these environmental rules, they're really determining the materials choices for sustainable materials, reduce carbon emissions, and circular economy, which basically means recycling. Here's an example of an agreement that just occurred this September, where Microsoft is basically committed to using green steel as part of its activities. And it's not alone. You'll see that AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, Google, Meta, the big companies, they are all part of the Sustainable Steel Buyers Platform. And so again, this is something that you just want to keep in mind for your products that you have. Another interesting thing that article that I came across was Vertiv, which is one of the big companies that constructs data centers, and they acquired Great Lakes data racks and cabinets. And the reason why is because Vertiv, and you'll see this a bit more later, as you can see with this other article, they are focusing on prefabrication of data centers. So basically, just modular data centers where everything is constructed offsite, and then they bring things to a local place and put those parts together. And so I think it's important to think about it from a market standpoint because even though there is an advantage to doing things locally that might be a bonus for you, it's also important to understand that with modular options that you do have a global market if you connect with a big organization like Vertiv. So today we're going to talk about these topics: how structural steel, racking, and enclosure support data centers, what you need to know, the components that we're talking about, industry resources, and we'll have some Q&A. Like I said, enter questions as we go along, and I will answer them at the end. So this, I think, is a really important diagram. It's basically, this is Census Bureau data, and you can see how data construction spending has really increased over the past 10 years. It really has sort of spiked up. It's particularly since some of the other markets like commercial buildings and things like that are more stabilized or decreasing. This is really the area where that is still going to be a growing market. I'm going to show you this little video here. So this is from Nucor, which is one of the green steel manufacturing companies. And I think it's interesting just because you can see all the little widgets and things like that that are part of, that are steel related, that are part of a data center. Okay. So hopefully that Tom and I, we decided we really like that music. It's very jazzy music. So what else did you know about these structures? So there's sort of three categories here. So the first is that in terms of government support, almost all the states are really doing what they can to encourage data centers to locate in their communities. And from your perspective, what makes a difference is that they're giving some sort of tax exemptions or incentives or all sorts of different things to do that. And so you'll see here that, for example, in New York State, you'll see things here for storage racks and cages and other things, property that will constitute raised flooring. So this is something that you can use as a selling point if you're located in one of these states. Here's also Ohio has something very similar where it's a sales tax exemption. Pennsylvania also has something. The Pennsylvania rules focus on there's a certain employment expectation that they have for these areas. So you really want to kind of take a look at some of these policies in whatever states that you work in and understand what economic incentives might be there. Another aspect, as I've mentioned before, is environmental goals. And you'll see here, this is from an article from Amazon, but it's true for pretty much all of these companies trying to figure out how to use lower carbon materials to build data centers. This one's focusing on both concrete and steel, but part of it is designing out the overall amount of the steel that they use. So trying to figure out ways to reduce the material to support the buildings. Like this is like changing air systems, encouraging suppliers to incorporate lower carbon steel in the supply chains, investing in innovative technologies. They're doing all sorts of things, anything they can think of to try to, reduce the carbon footprint of these data centers. Now this is again a little video I'm going to show you here. This is a geeky guy. He's going to talk Vertiv, which is again they're the ones who are doing these modular data centers. And my goal here is just for you to kind of see what these things look like.
And this is exactly what we do at Vertiv. With our prefabricated modular solutions, we're integrating the power infrastructure, UPS, batteries, cooling, and even racks and rack infrastructure, all factory installed and commissioned, ready to be deployed rapidly on site. If you're thinking of plug and play, this is exactly the solution for you. Even condensers are pre-installed. All that's needed is to bring the modules on site, connect the power and fiber optics cables, and you're good to go. Now, let's take a look inside one of our modular data centers. We are now inside a 150 kilowatts, 24 rack data center Smart Node Max. On my left-hand side, you can see the power infrastructure, the main switchboard, and with automatic transfer switch for switching between the mains and the emergency generator. Also, you can see the automatic fire extinguishing system with the automatic central and the gas tank. I am now inside the cold aisle of a Smart Node Max data center. What you can see around me are equipment racks and also in-row cooling units installed in a redundant configuration. Also, what we can see is the physical separation between the cold and the hot aisles, which guarantees optimal cooling performance. And finally, powering the servers, we have the in-row UPSs with battery cabinets, ensuring uninterrupted power to the IT load. In the hot aisle, we can see the overhead cable baskets for copper and also fiber distribution channels. And we can also see the amount of available space for access to the server equipment.
So that kind of gives you an idea what modular centers look like. The other thing that you should be aware of are these environmental product declarations. So these again are something which are kind of international standards for like what the environmental impact is of all the products that are used in these data centers. I like this thing as sort of where they describe it as a nutrition label, basically saying that looking at each product. So again, this is for each widget, anything that is part of a data center. And in Europe, particularly as an international market, and say like Virtua, for example, they're going to be definitely serving an international market. You really need to sort of understand and have figured out what the environmental impact is. And if you have a better like widget in the sense of it having less environmental impact, then that product is going to be much more marketable to these companies. The way they do this is they do a life cycle assessment. And you'll see here that it covers all the different stages from the time that, what we often call cradle to grave, from the point that materials are extracted, the transportation, the manufacture, site transportation, building construction, all the way to disposal for recycle or recycle of whatever those materials are. And this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, is that transportation is also a key factor in part of these EPDs that you're determining for your product. And so things that are more localized will have an advantage just from that one standpoint. So then we're going to talk about components. So in the report, and there's links again to the report in chat. You're going to see here that we have all those different things. Like for example, right here at the top, our blast and fire resistant panels. You might remember seeing that in the new core video. We have the number, the description, sort of how they're used. So you can, depending on like what kind of products that you currently produce or what you possibly could produce, you can look at this table to figure out something that might be marketable to a data center. Then the other thing we have in here is a list of developers and manufacturers. So for example, here are the companies that do data center construction. So these are organizations that you could reach out to if you're doing things related to structural steel, to racking systems, all these things. This is a list of some of the companies that you could reach out to try to sell your products, to try to get them to include them in there and what it is that they do for data centers. Now, in terms of industry resources, there's a number of different trade associations, one of which is this Association for Computer Operations Management. The General Contractors of America, they have a side activity related to this. Then you have the Institute for Steel Construction, the Data Center Coalition, Metal Building Manufacturers. So all these organizations, like if you just type in data centers and whatever it is, or maybe you're part of them already, they can help you connect, provide resources to all these different things. And then the Department of Energy has an Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, and they also have resources that can help you. So that's your quick overview on this topic. My final thoughts are pretty much the same for all of these, which is basically it is a potential, AI data centers are a potential emerging market for small and medium-sized manufacturers. The sustainability policies are really a big factor, even though the Trump administration might try to counteract that. In reality, these companies make the decisions like on their own. And really, you need to move quickly to try to capture some of this market. It's not something that's going to last for a really long time. We're already starting to see things kind of like settle out. And certainly I would expect through 2026 that we will stable, the whole market will stable in terms of AI data center construction. But the construction itself will last a couple of years. But you need to be in at the beginning to be part of that planning process. So if you have any questions, of course, please go ahead and enter them into chat here for today. But you can always email me. I get a lot of comments on LinkedIn for the past ones that I've done. That's a great way to connect with me. And this is a direct website. So, of course, there's all these, I guess Tom said 17, 20 of these papers. The ones that I have worked on, AI data centers, are all on this page. And you'll see here, it's the overview, the electrical infrastructure, cooling, and the steel activity. This video will be up on that page. And right now, the report already is on the page, and also this slide deck that I'm using here.
Hey, Debbie, thank you. Great information as always. And I would encourage everybody to download the link. Thomas shared it in the chat to download the report. We're lucky to get the preview and some great information as well as the others. So, Debbie, we have a few questions that have come in. And one of the supply chain questions, is the supply chain that has been serving Virginia just going to move up and serve Appalachia? So what are you seeing in that?
Um, yeah, so I think that I mean, obviously Virginia has been the main location, for a lot of, the data center activity. But I also think that these state policies are going to really be a key factor. So that, and also the other thing we need to keep in mind with Virginia is that they were kind of like the old data centers versus like the new data centers. So even though there, of course, some new ones that are being built, they're part of the reason that these companies are going to like our region to further into Appalachia, is because they need space and places to go. So I think that we can learn a lot from Virginia, but I also think that there's still opportunities that are from the region, and I don't think anybody's kind of locked into what's happening in Virginia for the rest of the United States. And also, we need to keep in mind globally because this is very much of a global marketplace.
Yeah, great point. And I think I've heard comments as you're mentioning, the old data centers, the new data centers, when oil and gas, shale gas started, it wasn't your mom and pop's gas, right? It was different in scale and magnitude. And we were talking a little before. I mean, the size of these data centers, a couple of these in short time could eclipse, what we see in Virginia out there. So two more questions so far. It says, are the buyers of your products the end user typically the end user like AWS or Google, or are the developers making those decisions?
Yeah, so as I understand it, the big companies, AWS, Google, and so forth, they're setting guidelines, sometimes like these broad guidelines, sustainability guidelines, and so forth. But the actual construction and development of these is are other companies, right? So some of those other companies that I have that are in the document, they're the ones who are actually doing the construction, getting the sites, and so forth. But that being said, like if you look at like for example, one of the articles that I showed, that Google and so forth are still making the big decisions. Like we're going to go with like this kind of steel, this kind of thing. But I think if you're somebody who produces some sort of widget or other kind of material, the people that you're going to be working with are going to be lower down in the chain. You're not going to be contacting Amazon and Google and things like that. You're going to be talking to the contractors, the big organizations who are actually put together all those different elements, those general manager contractors for those sites. And those are the ones who, you're going to, part of your pitch is really focusing on the fact that for some of these at least, that that you're local and that you have an advantage. They need to show job creation. Like to get some of those tax incentives, for example, you have to show job creation that's local. And one way to do that, I think is one of the things we really want to emphasize generally, is that the job creation at data centers themselves is very low. So it's really through the manufacturing of products that these data centers use. That's where you're going to get most of the job creation, but it's often overlooked in a lot of the analyses that is being done.
Okay, well, that's a great segue to the next question. Talks about there's a growing shortage of skilled trades to meet the demand of infrastructure development and power generation. Is workforce development a key challenge? And from what you've seen, have our VOTEX or trade schools expanded capacity?
Well, I think that my understanding of, and I've done for Catalyst Connection, I have done a number of workforce, related studies over time. The biggest, there sort of seems to be two challenges. As first, that we definitely have a shortage. There's like no doubt about it, but there's two challenges. One challenge is getting people who are willing to do those trades and who are interested in them and view it as like an honorable profession. And so a lot of what Catalyst does is to try to, recruit people, beginning at the high school level into all these different professions. So that's one really important factor. Uh, a second part that is also really important though, I think to consider is sometimes the compensation for some of these manufacturing jobs is relatively low compared to what, like these kids can sometimes get elsewhere. So if you see like the manufacturing jobs, sometimes you'll see them paying, say, $13 an hour when they can get like $15 an hour at Chipotle, right? And Chipotle is a lot closer. It's a lot easier job than a manufacturing job. And so compensation is a really big factor for some of the manufacturing jobs. Now, for some of the trades, the challenges is more, that there are unions and a lot of apprenticeship programs and education that needs to be involved. And that can sometimes be a challenge. One thing that one time I did focus groups. This is for Catalyst for people who were unemployed and people who were like who have been laid off from other kind of manufacturing jobs. And sometimes some of the training programs we have are not really designed for people who are like, like in their 50s, say, or 40s or 50s, who've been laid off and need to switch. And, so I think we have a lot of work to do in this area, but I would also say Catalyst is also doing a lot of work to try to improve that situation.
Good. Few more questions. And this one, does the environmental product declaration, the EPD requirements for structural steel used in data centers vary by state? So just generally, do those cross state lines?
Yeah, so the EPDs, they like how they are done, that's like an international standard. Uh, EPDs are not, I would say they're much more enforced at an international level than at a state level in the United States. And so I think the way to think about them is there's certain goals and things that are set by, say, like, say, Germany, for example. And that sets the standard, and then people are going for that standard. But at least at this point, I'm not seeing the standards being something that are a state regulation, but instead they are more like a voluntary action that these companies have. So they want to, they're global companies, they want to meet a global standard.
Okay, good. So multi-state, that sounds like good. Okay, a couple more here. These data centers need power on scale and 24/7. There are only two sources that meet that currently: natural gas and small modular nuclear. Since wind and solar and battery cannot meet and scale, does this give states like Pennsylvania a competitive advantage with proximity to the energy resources?
Well, what I've seen is that I would say what gives, Pennsylvania and other states, in this region an advantage is really that they have an all of the above energy strategy. So it's not, it's, they obviously, well, let me put it this way. Small modular nuclear is not active yet. It is an eye, it is something that people have been really focusing on, and it's on its way, but it's not there yet. So really, the reality is we're focusing on natural gas. Natural gas is something that we do have in the region. It's plentiful, it's inexpensive, but keep in mind again that there's always going to be that environmental concern. And so most of these companies are going to be using a mix. And I talked about this quite a bit in the energy version of this, so please watch that video if you haven't. It's going to be a mix of energy, wind, solar, and then they're always going to have some sort of energy storage. You even saw in that video I showed earlier, is uninterruptible power systems, things like that. There's going to be a lot of energy storage that is part of it. But that being said, I think that, and this is going also back to the workforce issue. One advantage of this region, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, parts of New York, is that we do have a skilled workforce. We need more people in the workforce, but we do have it. And I think that's an advantage, that we have multiple energy sources. When I was at Carnegie Mellon, I ran something called Energy Week, and I had people go to every single energy source, which is in with 1 hour of Pittsburgh. And so I sent this curriculum of students. We sent them on buses to everything that is here.
Good. Thank you. We got two more here. How can small manufacturers differentiate themselves when competing against established players like Nucor?
Well, I think the way I would look at it is Nucor is really more I would look upon them more as a client as opposed to a competitor, right? Because they are a big company, but it doesn't mean that you can't, participate in what it is they do. I mean, you're not like what they're producing is like the big structural steel kinds of things, but there's lots of things that go into that. And so that's why in the document, we have all those companies listed because, and when we're talking about the full supply chain here, and Nucor doesn't do everything themselves, right? Nucor goes and they outsource things as well. And so you want to be part of their supply chain, part of what it is that they produce. Maybe you're using their steel, so it's more sustainable steel and producing the widgets and things like that, but they aren't producing the widgets themselves.
Okay. We've got, I think, one more here, and this will talk what government incentives and tax exemptions are available in New York for data center suppliers and manufacturers. If you're not specific to New York or generally, what have you seen in your research? We can dig into that more.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, pretty much the one I showed you, and which is also linked in the report, is the one for New York State. Pretty much all the companies have, all the states have some sort of policy. The most important thing to keep in mind, and this relates actually, if you also on the page that I have, the presentation I gave, I think that was in October 1st, I remember, about 10 things to know about data centers, is that if you go to the National Conference on State Legislators, you will see literally hundreds and hundreds of policies related to data centers. And so it's constantly changing. So, you want to kind of keep your eye on what those policies are. Sometimes the policies are going to favor you as a manufacturer. Sometimes there's a chance for you as a manufacturer to try to influence a policy to say, hey, let's just, for these incentives, don't just give an advantage if they buy the equipment, give an advantage if they buy the equipment from manufacturers in our state. So that's something that you can consider doing. And sometimes there are going to be environmental standards. And so we've also seen those occur as well, like Colorado's one that sort of like comes to mind. So there's lots of policies and so forth that are happening all the time that are being discussed. And the question is which of these are going to be implemented.
Well, great, Deb. They always try to stump you, but you always get them, so we appreciate it. That's our last question. Turn it back to you, Tom.
Yes, I will say, I mean, I'm sure we will be working together in many ways going forward, Debbie. But as we come to the end of this series of 4 on AI data centers, I just want to say thank you. I've learned a lot myself. This has been very helpful. This is, a topic that everybody's talking about, but I feel like a lot of people don't have a lot of good, solid information. And so going through the content and what this really means for the manufacturers in Appalachia, I think is very helpful. So I hope that everyone finds this as beneficial as I do. And, thank you. I think that's a great offer on your part for people to be able to reach out through LinkedIn if they want to follow up with you on a question or a thought. And certainly folks can go through our We Make It Here .org/energy if they want any follow-ups. And certainly we will be reaching out to Debbie for the hard questions because she's the one who can help us with that. But yeah, thank you again. This is fantastic. And I hope everybody downloads the report so you can see for yourself.